Right, so principles of equality, these will still apply for, well, these are equalities. It's just that with absolute values, now we're not looking to isolate just the x. We have to isolate the absolute value itself, like we were manipulating an equation. I think that was 110 in module 1 that we went over, okay? We have to manipulate or solve the equation for the absolute value, okay? But again, it's just principles of equality. Whatever you do to one side, you got to do to the other side. Sometimes you use division, multiplication, subtraction, addition. Doesn't matter. Whatever you do to one side, you got to do to the other side, okay? So, well, this process is still the same, and you could put absolute values. You know what? We're not isolating the variable right now. We're isolating the absolute value, and then it's just not as quick as dividing by the coefficient. There's a little bit more after this that has to happen, and again, we're not dealing with inequalities here, so that last statement's not really applicable. All right, absolute value equation. So for an equation, this is the absolute value of some number equals, that'd be a number right there, by the way. So you could say, let's just substitute a value in there to give it some meaning. So the absolute value of x is 10, right? In fact, I'll write this separately. Absolute value of x is 10. So see how now there's a letter inside the absolute value? And you have to think about this because this is new. But the question that this is now asking is what value, and I'm going to purposely put this, or values, are 10 away from 0? And some of you, of course, would say, well, 10, of course, is 10 away from 0. But it's not just 10 that's 10 away from 0, 10 units. Negative 10 is as well, okay? So this means that you're going to end up with sometimes two answers for these types of problems that would then it would make this original statement a true statement, okay? Let's see, if A is positive, then solve, yeah, that's true. If A is 0, you only get one answer, but if A is negative, then it has no solution. So let's go through these, okay? If you have the absolute value of some number equals 0, well, what number or numbers are 0 away from 0? Only x equals 0 is. That's the only one that will make that work. It's just a unique scenario. I don't think we're going to see that too often, but what if it was a negative? Well, the absolute value of some number is, let's say, negative 5, okay? So what value is negative 5 away from 0? Again, this is a distance thing, right? So we never talk about distances in terms of negatives. So this one we would say, I think on the homework it ends up being a D and E. It can't happen. There's no solutions to this one, okay? So what about the absolute value of x equals negative a? Again, this would be one of these, if that's a negative value, then you end up with it just doesn't exist. No solutions on that, okay? Now, the situation that we're going to see most often is this one, okay, where you end up with two solutions like we saw right here. And I like to show it a very specific way, although you don't have to. If by chance you get an absolute value equals an absolute value, you just say, look at the first one, and then you say, well, it can equal the other absolute value, but not only it's positive, but it's negative as well. And I think we'll see an example like that too, okay? Again, that's not a very common scenario, but you will see that on the homework. And then this one is again, it's not as common as the first one, but we see it from time to time. Sometimes we don't even see this one right here, okay? This is our first example. Absolute value of x equals 7. So once again, what is this asking? What value or values, you can say numbers if you like, are 7 away from 0 is, or are 7 away from 0? Well, once again, you could say x equals 7. That's pretty good. But also x would be negative 7 too. If you replace this x with either one of these two values, you're going to get a true statement, right? And you could try this out just to check. Absolute value of x equals 7. Well, I'll replace the x with 7 and see what I get. So there's a 7 right there. Yeah, 7 is 7 away from 0, so that's 7 equals 7. That's true. Well, what if I made that 7 a negative 7 right there inside the absolute value? Yeah, it's still 7 away from 0 here. So that would still give us this 7 right there, which is still true. See that? And so the way that I like to see these, the way that I like to do them, not that you have to, but I like to show that this, from the inside of that absolute value, I'm going to split it up into two parts. One would be the positive of this number, and then the other one would be the negative. But by doing this, this is only, what I'm showing here will end up being on the inside of that absolute value, but it will force the statement to be true, okay? Something else you need to notice about this example is that we only do this part once we get the absolute value isolated. Okay, so if there was anything multiplied out here or added to this absolute value, I'd have to zero those out or make them phantom ones with principles of equality before I can split this up. Okay, otherwise it's going to jack things up real bad.